Hello, friends, and today let's have a look at some very old jokes from America's beloved 16th president, Honest Abe Lincoln. And now over to our esteemed leader. Abraham Lincoln, who was known to be a man of impeccable honesty, was also known to have a great sense of humor, something which his biographers have failed to highlight. In 1865, just months before his untimely death, his friend Frederick Farrah published a book, a collection of Lincoln's wit and wisdom, entitled Abe Lincoln, the Great American Jester. This book contains many funny anecdotes about his life and times, including some never-before-published jokes. So without any further delay, let us begin. The first joke is called Lincoln and Meagher. This story goes back to the early days of the Civil War. In September 1861, Lincoln received a dispatch from General Meagher, an Irish general commanding the Union forces in Kentucky. The dispatch read, "I have just captured a whole rebel division. What shall I do with them?" He signed off as ever, "Your obedient servant, Meagher." To this, Lincoln reportedly replied, "That is good news if true, but I suspect it is Meagher mere humbug." Humbug. The word means nonsense or bunkum, something we commonly say in America today. So this time, Lincoln suspected that General Meagher was pulling his leg, or in other words, lying through his teeth. Our next joke is called Hooker's Appointment. This story involves General Joe Hooker, one of the Union's most celebrated generals. In 1863, Senator Seward suggested that Hooker should be put in charge of an entire brigade. Some people opposed the idea because they thought that Hooker was a hothead and didn't get along with other officers. In fact, when General George B. McClellan recommended him for the post of Superintendent of West Point, he warned, "He is a fighting general, a very disagreeable person, quarrels with everybody, and has twice challenged me to fight." Lincoln agreed to appoint him anyway. So when Seward told Lincoln about his plan to put Hooker in charge of an entire brigade, the president replied, "I like your plan. We must win by hook or by crook." Moving on, let us hear a joke about Abe Lincoln and tobacco. The next one is called Cut Cavendish. When Abe Lincoln was traveling through Europe in 1861, someone asked him why Americans use so much tobacco. Apparently, Europeans were very fond of this newfangled American weed, and they wanted to know what it was about Americans that made them chew tobacco. So the president said, "Because they choose." Next up, we come across a story involving Commodore Charles Wilkes, who was in charge of capturing Confederate diplomats. The next one is called Commodore Wilkes. In 1861, President Lincoln learned that two Confederate diplomats, Slidell and Mason, had been captured on board the Trent, a British ship. He knew that this would likely cause diplomatic trouble with England. But when asked for his opinion about it, he replied, "Should the commander's foolish conduct place him in difficulties, I won't fail to give Wilkes a hoister." Hoister is an old word meaning an oyster. You see, old Abe was referring to the popular Washington saying, "Give a hoy-oster," which meant to give a cold reception. It's still in use today. You may have heard of such phrases as "give someone the cold shoulder" or "get the cold shoulder" from another person. The expression dates back to the 1700s and comes from the tradition of serving meat only to men of importance and giving everyone else bread and butter or vegetables. Women were often given a cold oyster instead of meat. Lincoln was saying that if the Commodore causes a diplomatic row with England, he will receive an oyster reception. Later, Lincoln even joked about calling Wilkes a plaice if he loses his job. Plaice is a type of fish, hence the pun. Now let us listen to a joke about Canon Fry, the son of Canon Fry, who was an American artillery officer during the Civil War. At the start of the war, he was placed in charge of Fort Sumter, where he defended the fort against the Confederates until relief arrived. After the siege, he continued to serve in the Union Army and eventually rose to the rank of Major General. He died of disease in 1864, having contracted malaria during the siege of Yorktown. He was only 39. Next one is called a proper cognomen. Once he saved the life of a comrade and was jokingly referred to by his colleague, Senator Sumner, as a son of a gun. No doubt he was referring to the old saying, son of a bitch. However, there was a little problem. Abraham Lincoln was present when Sumner said this. Now, the president could not very well say to Sumner, "Your turn of phrase may be common, but it is crass and offensive." Hence, he resorted to repartee. He replied, "No, you could with far greater propriety call him a son of a cannon." Cannon, you see, a cannon is a big gun, and was the father of Captain Fry. Let us now indulge in a lighter side of history and read a joke about Prince Alfred of Britain. Alfred was the second son of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. He was born on August 6, 1844, and died on December 30th, 1900. Next one is called a princely pun. When our Prince Alfred refused to accept the offer to become king of the Greeks, Honest Abe remarked that the reason he did not mount the throne of Greece was because he preferred his own native isle. Oil, of course, is a refined product of petroleum, whereas isle is a small island. We come now to a rather mean joke told by Abraham Lincoln about General Oops, General James B. Freneau, better known as Old Freneau, who was the general commanding the U.S. forces in New Mexico during the Mexican War. In March 1847, he sent a letter to Washington declaring that Santa Anna had fled from Mexico. This turned out to be false, and Freneau was court-martialed. He went on to fight in the Civil War, but without much success. He was killed in a skirmish in Virginia in 1864. Next one is called a severe retort. Lincoln was once talking to General Grant about how the latter managed to get a certain general into West Point. "You know, I got him appointed because," says the general, "I can tell you that he is a perfect man, brave, prudent, and temperate." "Oh, yes, I know all that," interrupted the president. "But have you ever tried him in battle?" "Well, no, but—" "Then," said Lincoln, "you have tried him elsewhere." That is quite a retort. In case you are wondering, retorts are quick, witty, and often sarcastic replies to what someone has just said. I hope you enjoyed listening to these jokes as much as I enjoyed researching and writing them for you. Please subscribe and leave comments. See you next time.